So thank you all for making it out today. I know it's quite a drive, the gauntlet in McLean and Vienna getting here, so appreciate it. Some of you are living close by, so that's nice as well. We'll be discussing pretty much an all-encompassing, or we'll be having an all-encompassing conversation regarding retirement today, which includes Social Security, Medicare, income planning. We'll also touch on the federal health plan, the federal pension, 401ks, thrift savings plans, IRAs, long-term care. So really, you're looking at, honestly, 4 hours, 4.5. We'll have you out of here by midnight, I guarantee it. Elena was telling me, some folks were saying it's too long of a presentation, and then I said we'll cut it down to 3.5 hours. So we'll try hard. Just joking. So if we take a look at this disclaimer, most folks can get through this in about 30 seconds, but really what this is saying this is not individual advice. Our regulators make us put this on here. This is for informational purposes. This information is here so that you find something useful there for yourself, and conversations or individual advice is really what is binding to us. But this is really informational and general information for you. A little bit about our team, who we are, so that you understand who you're dealing with today. Gary Korolev. I'm a chartered financial analyst, and I'm the owner of the company at this point. Now, this is Elena George. She's our operations director. You met her just a moment ago. Katya handles marketing. Svetlana handles client services, and this is the core team. There's other people that are not shown on this sheet here. And the roots of our company go to the early 1980s. Linda English, one of the first chartered or certified financial planners, fee-based fiduciary planners in the area, she founded English & Associates. And she ran that company for several decades. She was looking to retire about 10, 15 years ago. And I was at that point with first Morgan Stanley, then Merrill Lynch, and Charles Schwab, running big portfolios for big clients there. And I realized that I take that knowledge, but really work closer with individual clients and have a more boutique, independent approach, so there wasn't 8 layers of management and profit incentive between myself and our clients. So I found Linda, she found me, we worked together, and eventually she retired and I took over. And that's Sovereign Wealth Management, just so you understand the core, the roots of the company. That's a little bit about my family. That's us in Florida. And his name is Ilya, and this our daughter Ksenia. She's a figure skater, and he is into swimming and being rude to his dad because he just turned 12 and he knows absolutely everything. And I have to get up 4:10 in the morning, 4 days a week, to take him to swim practice. So that's our story right now. So this is a 2-part workshop. What is the problem that we're having with our workshops? People tell us, this is great, almost too great, because there's so much information, you're packing it in to this hour and a half, and I just can't retain it all. So we came up with a solution. This is part 1. This talk today is part 1, where we have a general discussion regarding Social Security, Medicare, federal employee retirement, 401ks, long-term care, securing lifelong income. Again, this is just a general overview. And then there is a part 2, which is fully customized, personalized retirement, so basic retirement plan and consultation. Again, often folks won't believe us, but it is still complimentary. This part 2, where you set up a meeting with us afterwards, and we have this conversation which is individualized to your situation. Retirement done right. What is retirement done right? What do you have to think about when you're thinking about your retirement plan, and what areas do you have to consider so that you feel like, okay, well, I've done everything absolutely that I need to do, and I don't need to worry about anything else? Well, we'll start with income, right? You need to live on something. So for most folks in retirement, that's made up of Social Security. Around here, pension is a big one because a lot of federal folks. And then we'll have clients come through and say, well, I like my Social Security, I like my friends that have pensions, I want to be like my friends, I want to have a secure, steady income. So it's often not the right thing for folks, but sometimes an annuity makes sense in that case. So that's income. Now, insurance. Medicare, of course, that's your insurance in retirement, sponsored by the government partially. Your health insurance, your long-term care insurance, and your life insurance, depending on your situation. Then we get into inflation protection and growth. So as many of you probably notice, if you're on a pension, your pension adjustments and your Social Security adjustments are not catching up with the real inflation out there. So a decade or two down the road, when you're not 65 anymore, when you're 75, 85, the pension is not really worth what it was when you first got it, right? When you first started receiving it. So your investment portfolio is the key to subsidizing your lifestyle as your inflation lags and as your pension lags inflation over time. So investment portfolio is key to keeping you liquid and having that extra money that you need to get you through retirement comfortably. So that's the gist of what we are covering today. Let's start with Social Security. Social Security basics. When can you file? For most people, or for almost everyone, the full retirement age is 66, 67, somewhere in between. You get 100% of your benefit. Minimum age to start receiving is 62, and you get 75% of the full benefit. At age 70, if you wait until age 70, you get 132% of your benefit. Cost of living adjustments. Since 1975, the average cost of living adjustment is 3.8%. Last 20 years, 2.61% per year. And in 2025, it's 2.5%. Well, you can take pictures, but Elena will send you the deck, so you don't have to.
You notice in the evaluation form at the bottom, it says if you want the PowerPoint slides, just circle yes, make sure your email's on there, and I will send you all the slides that Gary's covered tonight. Thank you. Yes,
sure. So, Social Security wage tax. How does the government pay for your Social Security and your Medicare? There's the Social Security wage tax. The first $176,100 of your income, of your salary, is taxed. About 6.5% from you and 6.5% from the employer. That's the FICA tax, and that's who pays. That's how the government pays for this benefit. In 2024, the maximum benefit for full retirement at full retirement age was $4,018 per month. Average benefit is $3,089 for married couples and $1,976 for single individual. To qualify for Social Security, you need 40 credits minimum. And well, to qualify for both Social Security and Medicare, you need 40 credits, which is 1 credit equals 1/4 of work, earning at least $1,810. So it's really part-time work, which is about $7,240 per year. How is Social Security taxed? The first $25,000 of an individual's income and the first $32,000 of a couple is not the Social Security. So if your income is less than $25,000 as an individual, less than $32,000 as a couple, your Social Security income is not taxed. For individuals, if it's between $25,000 and $34,000, 50% of the income is taxed. And for married couples, it's between $32,000 and $44,000, 50% is taxed. And over $34,000 and respectively over $44,000, 85% of your Social Security income is taxed at your income tax bracket. And when you say combined income, that's adjusted gross income plus non-taxable interest, which is if you have municipal bonds, plus 1/2 of your Social Security benefits. That's what combined income means. Factors to consider when deciding on Social Security strategy. Okay? Life expectancy at your age, not in general. You'll see what I mean. Example, general life expectancy in the US is 76.8 years. However, that's not life expectancy for anybody in this room. Okay? Because life expectancy for a 66-year-old is 86, not 76.8. Because 76.8 is somebody that's just born today. For somebody that's already lived and is very close to this life expectancy of a newborn, of course, they have a longer chance of surviving longer. So for males, it's 86. For a 66-year-old male, it's 86. For a 66-year-old female, it's 92. Okay, so that's when you're thinking about just the average. 50% of folks that are 66 that are females will live to 90, less than 92. Half of them will live more than 92 years old, older than 92 years old. Your health, of course, if there's there's not a lot of longevity in the family, you may want to consider that as when you're thinking about when to take your Social Security. Marital status, married, single, divorced, survivor. These are all, you could apply different strategies based on your marital status. Employment status. Those receiving Social Security prior to full retirement age, earning more than the earnings limit, have benefits partially withheld. We'll cover that a little bit later as well. So if you start receiving your Social Security benefit at 62, you may end up having the government claw that back until your full retirement age. Okay, a little bit of a chart here, again, just to hammer it home that how important it is to think long term. 5% of men will live to age 100. 5% of women will live to age 102. 25% of men will live to age 94. 25% of women will live to age 96. 50% of men live until age 89. Okay, so just think about those numbers when you're thinking about retirement. How many decades you've got? Everybody in this room is basically, a newborn at this point. You've got decades ahead of you. So we've just talked about full retirement age. What is full retirement age for different age groups? If you were born in 1958, your full retirement age is 66 years and 8 months. And if claiming your Social Security at age 62, benefit is reduced to 71.67. So what the government has done is they're gradually reducing the amount of benefit you receive because there's not enough money in the pot for everyone. So if you were born up through 1954, if you took your benefit at 62, you would get 75% of the benefit. But now, if you were born in 1959, you only get 70.83%. If you're born 1960 or later, you're getting 70%. So you see, it's gradually being cut back because there's not as much money as there used to be. So let's talk about one basic strategy that can work for folks in order to subsidize their income during retirement. So married couples split strategy 60-70. If married, the younger and lower earner may want to take their benefit early at age 62 and have the higher earner wait until age 70, at which point the lower earner can switch her lower benefit from her lower benefit to the spousal benefit, which is much higher. So let's talk about how that works. Let's say we have Sam. His full retirement age is 66. And his benefit amount is $2,400 at full retirement age. Kathy, her benefit amount is $700. Her full retirement age is 66 as well. So what does Kathy do? Instead of waiting until full retirement age, she takes her benefit early and she gets a reduced benefit of $525. So they're getting that monthly benefit of $525 per month for almost a decade. And Sam doesn't start taking his benefit until he gets to age 70, so his benefit is now not $2,400, it's 132% of the full retirement age benefit, so it's $3,168. At that point that Sam turns on his benefit, Kathy can now switch to her spousal benefit, which is half of Sam's full retirement age benefit. So now she gets an extra $500 for a total of $1,025 as a benefit. Plus, Sam is getting this big benefit. That's obvious, so you see that now with Sam's income and with the spousal benefit, they're both receiving a much higher income. But what is not as obvious is here, upon Sam's passing, the spouse, the survivor, receives the higher of the two benefits. So that will be $31,068. Let's, God forbid, Sam passes away at age, let's say 71, 72, 73. Now, at least, Kathy has that nice, comfortable Social Security benefit for the rest of her life, inflation adjusted. So this is a very important point. So when, let's say it's a couple, and one of the two earners make more than the other, that usually happens. When you're thinking about taking your benefit, if you're thinking of both of you taking it at age 62, 63, it's nice to start receiving that check early. However, if the higher earner passes away, the income is going to be greatly reduced. It's not going to be this amount, right? It's going to be a much lower amount. So it's almost like an insurance policy, like a life insurance policy, but in form of a monthly payment that is going to be much lower for the widow than it would be if at least one of the two spouses waited until, one of the two partners or earners waited until age 70. So that's important to consider.
Question?
Yes?
I heard a rumor that rule has changed this year.
I have not seen anything about this changing. Now, a few years ago, file and suspend was taken away. So that you may be talking about file and suspend.
Yeah.
File and suspend, that's even a much more lucrative strategy, which they did away with about 5 years ago. But this, as far as I'm aware, and I do these seminars all the time, this is still in place, because this is not really, file and suspend was almost like stealing money from the government. I mean, it was a great way to get extra money by doing a little, going through this hole, but this is still in place.
They took away for people born in 1954 or later.
Exactly, yes, that's file and suspend, that's right. Married couples, should the lower earner wait until 70 or full retirement age? Let's see here. So, here's a chart of how the income accrues for the higher earner. So you start with 75%, then go up to 80%, 86.7, and so on. This is how the spousal benefit accrues. Okay, so if the spouse is waiting to receive that half of the higher earner's benefit, the spousal benefit only grows for the first 5 years, from 62 to 66, 4 years, let's say. Then it does not grow anymore. So you think, well, the spouse now, she should take the benefit, or he should take the benefit, the lower earning spouse, at 66. However, the spousal benefit cannot be initiated until the higher earner initiates their benefit. So that's important. So, of course, the spouse would naturally want to take the benefit at least here, because there's no benefit of waiting longer. It doesn't grow anymore. However, if the higher earner is waiting to up their benefit until age 70, well, then this spousal benefit can't be turned on until the higher earner is age 70. Okay, just have to consider that. Spousal benefit eligibility. Again, the higher earner must have filed for their own benefit. Must be married for 1 year. Must be currently married. Okay. Divorced Social Security benefit strategy. Eligible. To be eligible for the divorced spousal benefit, for the divorcee spousal benefit, must be single. Both you and the ex-spouse must be at least 62. Your marriage must have lasted at least 10 years. Now, this is a big one right here. I'm sure, well, I can tell you that we've come across folks that it was unfortunate they or somebody they know had an unfortunate marriage. They were married for a long time. They were miserable. One of the spouse was miserable. It's usually the woman. She was miserable in the marriage, and then about 9.5 years into it, not knowing about this rule, they end the marriage. And then what happens is, later on, this poor lady finds out that if she waited 10 years, if she waited another 6 months, at least she would have the spousal benefit at retirement. So if you know somebody in this situation and they're in 9 years, 8 months in or something, tell them to stick through it, hold on for dear life another 2 months, so at least they get something out of it, the spousal benefit in terms of Social Security, okay? Yes, your divorce must have been finalized at least 2 years ago. That's important too. Now this is important. The divorcee spouse can take their own benefit or 50% of the ex-spousal benefit. So you have the choice there, just like you would for married couples. However, for the divorced, you don't have to wait. So the spouse doesn't have to, the divorcee doesn't have to wait for the ex-spouse to start their benefit to receive the spousal benefit, because they're not married, so they can't really, they're not a unit anymore. So the government allows that in this case. Social Security strategy for widower, survivor. Instead of 62, if you're a survivor, you can start to take the benefit at age 60, and you get 70% of the benefit. And past age 66, you get 100% of the benefit. And if you're disabled, you can get 100% of the benefit at age 50. Okay? Now, another interesting strategy, if someone is in this situation, unfortunate situation, is the survivor can start taking the survivor benefit at age 60 while letting their own benefit grow until age 70. This is a great little tool you can use to really prop up your income during retirement. You can't receive survivor's benefit if you remarried before age 60. Okay? So I won't go through the slide because people hate it. It's too much detail. But what I'll do is just cover the overall, the big picture. So based on when the deceased filer passed away, let's say the higher earner passed away, the benefit that the survivor receives is different. It's calculated differently. So it's different for if the filer is deceased and did not file and died before or after full retirement age versus if they did file on or after full retirement age versus they did file before full retirement age. If you have those questions, if it's your situation, I'm glad to go over it with you if you have that question individually. Social Security strategy for widowers, survivors, disabled. We won't go through that because that's another slide that's similar. Does working while receiving a Social Security benefit increase your future benefits? Maybe. That's a bad answer. A better answer is yes, if your earnings exceeded one of the top 35 years adjusted for inflation used to calculate your Social Security benefit. What does that mean? So, because we actually had this question asked in the class, so to speak. So, let's say you worked for 35 years at least, and you had fairly high income. So, that average, that 35-year average is already filled up, and you're getting a nice, healthy income. Working extra, part-time job or something, is probably not going to help increase your Social Security benefit. Because working in retirement, unless you're really making a lot of income, is not likely to replace one of those 35 years and make a difference. Now, let's say you worked for 10 years, maybe you were raising children and you worked outside the home for 10 years, and then you have, so that now you have another 25 years of zeros that go into that 35-year calculation average. So your benefit is very low. Then every single year that you do work, even while you're receiving Social Security, is going to increase your benefit dramatically, especially if you have good income. Because one of those zeros, for every year there's a zero in that average, it gets replaced with an income. So now the average goes up for you. Okay, so that's how that calculation goes. Inflation. This is very important when you're calculating Social Security. And so we're just going to have these slides peppered through the presentation because inflation is a big deal. Dealing with investments all the time, I can tell you it's a big deal. And in 2000, a loaf of bread was $1.26. Now it's $3.71. Movie tickets, don't even ask. It's like going to Disneyland, Disney World these days. It costs me like $200 to get out of the movie theater. It used to be $5.39 per ticket. Now it's $13.71. I think that's a lie. I think it's much higher than that because I don't even want to go to the movie theater anymore ever, the way how much it costs. So gallon of milk, $2.78. Now it's $4. Okay, so you have to think about that when you're planning for your retirement, not just take the numbers the way they are. Now, why planning is important. Let's look at a couple. Let's look at Ron and Nancy. Ron and Nancy, they are taking three different approaches to taking their Social Security. This version of Ron and Nancy are impatient and they start taking their Social Security at 62. Their life expectancy is 85 and 90. The monthly benefit at full retirement age is $3,011 and $2,235. They live until their life expectancy, they will have received $1,659,000 total. The same Ron and Nancy wait until their full retirement age to take the benefit, which is 67 for them. They will have received $1,945,000. So about $300,000 more than the impatient Ron and Nancy. The third Ron and Nancy wait until age 70 to take their benefit and live until through their life expectancy. They will have received $2,126,000. So that is a $467,000 difference between the 62-year-old Ron and Nancy and the 70-year-old Ron and Nancy. Okay? That is a nice number, $500,000. However, you have to think about that quality of life during those 10 years or 8 years that you're waiting to start receiving that bigger benefit. Plus, again, you have to think about inflation. Is this really $2.1 million? This is really $466,000 because every single year you waited, you actually were receiving a lower number because of inflation. Comparison. When to file for Social Security. When is the break-even? When does it not matter what age you file? Around age 76, it doesn't matter because no matter what age you file, that's what break-even is. Let's look at a chart. Who's ahead at what age? By age 72, the late filer is behind because they wait until 70. The early filer, of course, is ahead. Even though they're getting a lower income, they've been receiving income for 10 years already. But at age 82 already, the 70-year-old filer is ahead with the one who started at full retirement age 66 is in the middle, and the 62-year-old filer is behind. By age 92, of course, the person who waited until 70 is way ahead. Now, this is a key point to consider here. Is CPI underreporting inflation? So is the official government figure for inflation, is that a true figure or is it not? Why is this important? Because the CPI, which the Consumer Price Index, is used to adjust cost of living adjustment for your Social Security, for pensions, for everything else. So you have to consider that in your planning, right? You have the Big Mac. You think about, well, why? That's pretty random. Why are you looking at the price of a Big Mac over the decades to track inflation? Well, it's actually an extremely accurate way. Well, not extremely. Let's say pretty accurate way to track inflation. Why? Because it includes absolutely almost every single part of the economy in it. You have commodities, meat, buns, sesame seeds, cheese, or whatever they call cheese. I'm sure it's not cheese. You have labor, you have transportation, fuel costs, real estate, labor cost. All of that combined goes into this burger, right? And it's a very efficiently made burger because we know McDonald's is very efficient at what they do. So if they're doing it for a certain price, that's probably the best price that can be gotten out there for this burger. So, since 1993, the CPI price of a Big Mac, so if the CPI was accurate, since 1993 to 2025, the price of a Big Mac should be $4.92 because we just took those numbers and calculated them into the future. That's a 116% increase in the price of a Big Mac since 1993. However, the price of a Big Mac is $5.69. It increased by 150%. Okay, so over the decades, that difference between 116% and 150% is a big deal, since especially that the CPI is a crucial number that goes into your cost of living adjustment. If you start taking your Social Security prior to your full retirement age and your income is over $23,400, for every $2 over this limit, $1 is withheld from the benefit. During the year you turn full retirement age, this limit is $62,160, and for every $3 over this limit, $1 is withheld from the benefit. Okay, so it's self-defeating in a way. If you, again, start taking your Social Security early, but then you still have a big income, and what counts toward income is the spousal income is not counted. What's counted towards it is wages and net profit if self-employed. Okay, then the government is just going to withhold that income, put it back into the calculation, and then you can start receiving your Social Security as if you didn't work those years. You can start receiving your full Social Security at your full retirement age, which is around between 66 and 67. And then you can work as much as you want. The government won't withhold the benefit. Okay. What's not counting towards this earnings limit is pensions, annuities, investment income, interest, veterans benefits, or other government or military retirement benefits. So that's important because a lot of folks have the pensions around here and investments. So if you're getting into the situation where you're receiving your Social Security benefit, but you're also working, and you think you're going to come up over this limit, notify the Social Security Administration that that's going to happen, because if you don't and they find out, they see it through the Social Security, the tax returns you filed, they have to look back. What's going to happen is they'll just cut off your Social Security income completely until the end of the year, and that doesn't feel good if you're depending on that money to pay bills. Okay. Another strategy. Take Social Security at age 62. Invest what is not spent to supplement income later. So this is a strategy where some folks will say, you know, I don't trust the government with my money. I'll handle it better myself. I'm a great trader and so on. I'm going to invest in some crypto and make a lot of money. The pros of that strategy, you have, of course, more control over the resources since the funds are in your pocket sooner. Chance to grow the funds and accumulate them over a longer period of time, and to potentially avoid higher Medicare costs later due to IRMA tax on higher income. Reduce potential risk of cost of living adjustments lagging real inflation. So that's the tax, and we'll discuss that when we talk about the price of Medicare. IRMA is the penalty, the tax that is put on higher earning households for having a higher income than the income at the lowest bracket. And we'll cover that chart. It has to do with the cost of Medicare. Great question. Cons. Of course, requires discipline. If you start taking that income early specifically because you're trying to invest it and save it for later, then you can't spend it. You're getting that nice extra check, $1,000, $1,500 per month in your account, or $2,000 maybe if you really have good income. If you saved up a lot for Social Security, if you worked a lot, and then, you know, that vacation, that river cruise, that Viking river cruise, you know, down the Rhine looks really great in the advertisement, you know. So you have to be careful. You have to have self-control not to actually spend the money. That's hard for a lot of folks. Lower monthly Social Security check later in retirement. Again, if the high earner passes away at age 73 or something, the lower earner now has a much lower cushion to get them through their retirement, because the higher earner didn't wait until age 70 to have that higher income, that higher cushion, to cushion that lower earner through retirement with that higher income. Has to be planned carefully, given many who are still working and file prior to full retirement age would pay the Social Security earned income penalty, which we just talked about. So some folks think they're going to do this, and then they start taking income, but they can't live on, you know, $20,000 a year, so they're still working. And since they're still working, the government withholds that early Social Security benefit anyway because you're making too much. So all this has to be considered. Social Security buyback. Let's say you started taking your Social Security at age 62 or 63, whenever, and you change your mind. We had somebody in our seminar say, you know, can you turn off Social Security and just give it back? Because they had an inheritance. Unfortunately, their mother passed away, and now this lady had money, and she didn't want the Social Security anymore. She was living off the inheritance, and she wanted the Social Security to build up. Yes, you can give the money back to the government as long as it's a year or less since you started taking the benefit. You can just say, I've made a mistake. I'm going to give you the money back, government, and now I changed my mind. So the Social Security Administration allows you to do so. They allow you to give the money back, no interest, no penalty, as long as it's less than 12 months. And like it never happened, it will just keep growing. Social Security suspend. This is another strategy. Let's say you started taking at age 62, 63, and now you feel like, okay, well, you know, I've taken a few years off, now I want to go back to work. I want to go back to work because I miss it. Or I'm sick of my spouse, spending too much time together, they're just getting on my nerves. So what you can do is at your full retirement age, let's say it's 66 years and 6 months, you can now file to suspend the benefit. And then you can wait until up to age 70, just like anybody else, and that benefit keeps building again for you because you suspended it. This can only be done once at full retirement age. So you have to wait until your full retirement age to do this. Here's an example. Let's say John's full retirement age benefit is $3,000. John started taking his Social Security at 62. He was receiving that reduced benefit of $2,250, or 75% of his benefit. He suspended the benefit at his full retirement age of 66 and restarted at age 70. So that $2,250 times 1.32 equals $2,970. Again, this is a very approximate calculation just to show you the point. So his benefit, which was reduced, and is now back to that $3,000 which he would have had if he had just waited anyway till full retirement age. So it's like a second chance to rebuild that benefit. FERS pension, so Federal Employee Retirement System pension. How many federal employees are in this room today? Okay, a few. All right, good job. Thank you for your hard work. I hope you're getting paid soon. So most folks that I deal with that are federal pension receivers, they understand how the system works, so I'll just go through it very quickly. Of course, the calculation is years of service times annual average of highest 3-year salary times 1.1. Now, here's a key point that some folks tend to miss is sick leave gets added to pension calculation, but days fall off. So use sick days which don't add up to a month prior to retirement. So what does that mean? So let's say you are very good and diligent, you worked, you never took a day off, you were never sick, and you have 70 days. Well, 60 of those days, of those sick days that you're supposed to get paid for, 60 of those will get added to the pension calculation. 10 of them won't, so you'll just lose them. So what happens often, and I'm not saying you should do this, is folks tend to get sick right at that month before retirement for about 10 days, you know, since they have those days, and they'll just lose them if they don't get sick.
And they don't tell you that.
Of course, yeah. Got to find out. It's the word on the street. The word on the street never lies. Retire December 31st to get unused annual leave as a lump sum. That's another little point. Pension starts on the first of the month following retirement. So retire at the end of the month. Don't retire at the beginning of the month, because you retire at the end of the month, you still get the check at the very beginning of the next month. So what happens is if you were a federal employee and you switch jobs quite a bit, or your positions went from the Defense Department or working for the military and then maybe switch to different areas of the government, what happens is documentation can get messed up, and what can sometimes happen is, you know, you may have plans to travel with family, with friends, you're retiring, and then a week before retirement you find out that all of this is actually messed up, all of these calculations, and maybe you don't actually qualify to retire yet. And that can really mess up your plans. So make sure that Office of Personnel Management, Standard Form 50, an electronic official personnel folder, pay attention to calculations for military time, part-time, and intermittent service. Okay, now before we get into Medicare, I have another treat for you today. I told you this was going to be very comprehensive. We actually have Gerarda here, Culipher. She is from Dominion Law, and estate planning obviously is extremely important. So to make sure that the money that you are saving is efficiently passed on to the people who you wanted to pass on to, okay? And so we have Gerarda today to give you a breakdown of what estate planning is, what the basics are, and so you have questions. She's a great resource for that, okay?
All right.
Give a little hand to Gerarda today.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Gary. Oh,
Actually,
oh boy.
I have a microphone today because
Okay.
we're recording this because you were the star. So if there's a way you could put this...
Sure. Let's see if we can, well.
There we go. It's kind of awkward.
It's a
There we go.
family,
That's fine.
family
That's
show.
good. No, there we go.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. How are you? My name is Gerarda Culipher, and I'm with Dominion Law Group, and our main offices are in Great Falls, so not far down the street from here in Vienna, not too far. And my husband and I lived actually here in Oakton we've lived in Oakton for about 20 years now, so we've raised our family right here too. So tonight I'm just going to be talking really quickly about an approach that's Virginia specific. So the sort of estate planning approach in every state in the Union is a little bit different depending on the state laws. But in Virginia, we have a heavy emphasis on probate, which is court observed. There's the clue. There's the very thing. In Virginia, we have what's basically described as court overseen probate. That's a public record courthouse process. But the good news, Virginians, all of you, is that there's an alternative, a private alternative. And in Virginia, that's really what we call trust planning. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the difference between a court open record, public record inheritance scheme versus a private contract-based trust planning inheritance scheme, and what the benefits are not only to you as the decedent or the grantor, but also really to your adult children or your loved ones to whom you're giving your bounty at the end of your life. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the end of life planning. That doesn't just mean what happens at your passing. Important. It also covers how to manage decline and how to give the right amount of authorization to somebody, an agent, a power of attorney, other things like that, to help you manage the decline that can happen before passing. So that's a quick overview, but we're going to start with a very, very famous Virginian. And that Virginian is a certain person called George Washington. So like you, he lived in Virginia. He, yes, was our Revolutionary General, but he also was a landowner, a homesteader in Mount Vernon. And does anybody know what county Mount Vernon's located in? Very good. Fairfax, Virginia. So George Washington's original handwritten will is still located at yours and mine, our courthouse in Fairfax, right down in Fairfax City. Now, why is it that our first president's handwritten will is located at the courthouse? Well, the answer is we have a public court record process for probate. Did then in 1799 when he passed, do now in 2025-26. So if you elect to do will-based planning, I am here to communicate to you your will, the original ink-stroked will have to be submitted to the courthouse if you have a probate. The original gets surrendered to the court. So that becomes a very public record. That's the courthouse there. There I am. There's the probate office up there on the 4th floor of the courthouse in Fairfax. And that's where you would go, your family, your loved one would go to get appointed as executor under just a will. Now we're going to compare that to the trust planning. Okay, so in a will document, maybe some of you have a will, some of you don't, they've been meaning to. The language we use is that you are the testator or the testatrix. That's an old word for the person who's making the gift to the family member, the decedent, the person who's writing the will, the author. The person you name as your fiduciary at the courthouse is your executor. That's the person you select to do the busy work of seeing to your estate's distribution to your heirs. Okay? And then finally, your heirs, or what are called your legatees, or your devisees. A legatee is somebody who gets a gift, like a piece of jewelry. A devisee is somebody who gets a piece of property, for instance, maybe a townhouse in Tysons. And your heirs are actually defined by the Code of Virginia. They're called heirs at law. Now, for a little bit of fun, because in 1799, George Washington did not have this trust with Martha. But this is an example of what George and Martha's trust might look like today. So compare this to the will which was, of course, handwritten. Here we have what's basically a private contract-like agreement. And here we have the trust agreement is entered into by George Washington and Martha Custis Washington, also known as Martha Custis, right? That was her maiden name. And this goes through that they're husband and wife, they establish a trust that for their lifetimes, those trust assets are meant to support Martha and George. After their passing, however, the trust assets are meant to pass through the trust directions or instructions to their children. Well, now, George didn't have children, but he adopted the children Martha had. So those are the differences. One's a will-based estate plan is going to be a public courthouse document. Whereas you have a private trust arrangement that keeps your adult children, your beloved niece, your favorite nephew, whoever you're naming to take care of your affairs and receive your wonderful benefits, all that money that Gary is going to have invested and made for you. Instead of exposing them to a court record, those documents require your children or your niece or your nephew, their name, their mailing address, their cell phone number, their email. There's a terrific amount of public records exposure with a probate these days. So that's one of the benefits to the trust planning. But in addition to the benefits of trust planning in the context of a private probate, if you will, we also have the ability to build an infrastructure in that document that accords for and has the trustee, the adult child or the nephew, step up to serve you if you begin to decline. This is what has to be part of your conversation with Gary. As you begin looking at how you're going to expend your funds that are being invested and are growing over time, you want to have a conversation about what happens and who has liquidity available to use for hiring private duty nursing care if you need it. Who has the legal authority to make medical decisions for you? Do you have a power of attorney to make medical decisions if you go to get treated at Inova? Who's legally authorized to step up to the plate for you? Well, your trust document can address this, and other estate planning documents like an advanced medical directive, a HIPAA waiver, a durable power of attorney can equally, and they're part of a master package. But what I really want you to focus on when you think about the estate planning and the trust planning is making sure you have adequate liquidity. One of the benefits Gary will tell you about is the relative liquid nature of investment portfolios. Of course, there are going to be your retirement, tax-sheltered, tax-favored accounts. But there are still other accounts that can be readily turned, can be ready cash for your adult child to hire that assistant or nurse. So ask your financial advisor, ask Gary, can I pay $15,000 a month to a private duty nursing support system if I need to? The going rate, I think you did you do the chart on the going rate of nursing care, long-term care?
Yes, that's actually a chart about that. It's not pleasant.
It's not a pleasant chart, but I'm going to draw when that chart comes up, if we've already done it, focus on how are you going to appropriately make sure that you can get the assisted living care or the in-home care that you need. All of this can be addressed in your documents. Talk to your financial advisor, the Garys of the world, about putting your revocable living trust. Once you executed the trust, once you've done the trust document, one of the agile things about a trust is that you can place it in the contingent beneficiary. That means the backup position. So you can have your adult children named as your primary beneficiaries, and Gary does this all the time for folks, and then the backup plan is where you can put the trust. The benefit to that is if one of your adult children were to, God forbid, predecease you, the trust would scoop it up and there wouldn't be an issue of exposure there. So that's one advantage to having a trust. No will is going to serve in that way. No will can serve that way, but a trust can. And then finally, I'm just here to take questions at the end, so I really appreciate Gary inviting me tonight. I'm glad to answer any specific questions you have, but just remember, you have to have a plan, because in the absence of a plan, all of your loved one and all of your assets become a matter of the public record and get worked through the court. And nobody wants to go to court if they don't have to. Very good.
All right. Gerarda. All right. Thank you.
You got it.
Just get my microphone here. get hooked up. Okay. So, and I think it's a good moment to mention, so this is for most of our clients by far, estate planning, really all of our clients, is critically important, and at times we get those questions. We work with Dominion Law to help our clients, because we don't do the estate planning ourselves, so we don't write those estate planning documents for clients. We often advise on just the basics of what needs to be done overall. And what happens in the investment management, wealth planning type of environment is usually there's what is called, at a certain level of assets, there's what is called a multifamily office or ultra high net worth approach. So your JP Morgans, your Goldman Sachs, they usually start you off at about, if you have $10 million under management, then they'll also pick up the cost of your accountant, your tax return preparation, and your estate planning attorney. They will pay for that, including in their investment management and the financial planning fees. We, for our clients, if we're managing all of our clients' assets, because we are a boutique, we control our costs, we're able to get clients into that multifamily office program at $2 million in assets under management. So if a client is managing their assets with us, if they have at least $2 million under management, we actually pay for the estate planning documents and yearly for the tax returns. We handle that as well. Okay, so just put that out there that I don't know any other advisor that actually has that program at that level of assets. So let's talk about Medicare. So your Medicare coverage choices. You can do the original Medicare, Part A, which is the hospital insurance, Part B, which is the medical insurance, outpatient care, like you're used to having with your policy at work. Then you can add on to that the Medicare supplement policy, otherwise known as Medigap, and Part D, which is prescription drug plan. Or you can replace all of this with a Medicare Advantage plan, or Part C, because it combines Part A and Part B into one plan. It's a private plan. Typically includes prescription drug coverage, which is replacement for Part D on this side, and may offer additional benefits not provided by original Medicare. They could be providing a gym membership to you, other benefits that are often pretty useful. So, who is eligible for Medicare? People 65 and older, and those with some disabilities. Citizens, legal residents who have worked and paid Medicare taxes for 10 years, have those 40 credits like for Social Security, and who have lived in the United States for 5 years in a row before enrolling. Initial enrollment period is the 7 months, this is critical, the 7 months around your 65th birthday. So that's the 3 months before, the month of your birthday, and the 3 months after. If you're already receiving Social Security, then it will be automatically enrolled in Part A and Part B. So you have to actually unenroll yourself through the website if you don't want to have Part B. If you do not have creditable coverage and do not apply during the initial enrollment, a 10% lifelong penalty for every year you are late to enroll is tacked on to your Medicare insurance cost. Okay, so it's critical that you either have coverage through your employer if you're working past age 65, or you sign up for Medicare, unless you're just sure you're never going to sign up for it. General enrollment period is the first quarter of every year with benefits starting the following month. Special enrollment period is, so this is the period that allows enrollment in Medicare Part B and or Part D without penalty, even if you delay due to other coverage. So this is if you kept working and you had that creditable coverage, which is a policy through your employer, let's say until age 68, and then you are now no longer working, you're retiring, you can take that letter of creditable coverage to the Medicare office as a proof that you had that creditable coverage, so you're not penalized even though you're starting 2 years after or 3 years after 65. So, and you qualify, again, if you have health coverage through your or your spouse's current employer. That's critical. So the special enrollment period lasts for 8 months, starting from the month your employment or employer coverage ends, whichever comes first. No late enrollment penalty applies during the valid SEP period. Now, it does not apply to COBRA or retiree coverage. Those do not count as active employment. Okay, so that's critical. Do not have to wait for end of employment to apply for Medicare. So you can still, if you want to apply for Medicare while still working, you can do so. So let's talk about the different parts of Medicare in detail. Part A is hospital insurance. There's no premium, so that's why you should always sign up for Part A. For most people, there's no premium. However, most folks don't know this because they hear it's free. That means it covers everything at the hospital. No, there is a deductible, $1,632 per incident. So if you go into the hospital 3 times, you're going to pay $1,632 per hospital stay. That can add up. That's in a year. And co-insurance, which varies depending on length of stay. Rooms, meals, nursing services, equipment, and operating room. Part B, again, is medical insurance. Substantial cost during retirement, as you will see. Premium, deductible, copay, or 20% co-insurance. Again, very similar to what you're used to at work. Doctor visits and services, outpatient care, clinic visits, emergency room, ambulance, preventative care, medical insurance. Part C is the Medicare Advantage. Private insurance may or may not have a premium. Covers everything Medicare Part A, Part B covers and more. Often includes benefits not included in Medicare. Again, we discussed these little benefits like maybe some for over-the-counter drugs, medications, or a gym membership, which can add up quite a bit over time. Now, the downside of Medicare Advantage is it has a network. So when we're doing these, and we, being advisors for clients and wealth managers, for a long time we didn't actually advise on Medicare just because it's not usually the purview. But because we started getting a lot of these questions from our clients, we really started advising on Medicare for our clients and signing them up for it because it becomes so confusing. It's so different from everything else they've dealt with. And so the issue when we're advising clients on which Medicare policy to go with, Medicare or Medicare Advantage or Medigap plan, is this issue comes up a lot. It has a network. So if you have Medicare Advantage, the issue is it's like your work plan where there's a network and it can be quite restrictive if you have a list of doctors like everybody has that they're used to and they like. And also medications, some plans pay more for certain medications, some pay less. So what happens is you put all that information into a list and then you look at which plans are most advantageous to your situation. That's how a good advisor is going to help you figure out which Medicare Advantage plan is best for you if you're leaning towards that option. So they cover most types. Part D cover most types and classified classes of drugs normally used by Medicare participants. There is usually a premium, copay, and a deductible. Drugs are covered based on tiers 1 through 6. Tiers 1 through 5 equals higher the tier, the more expensive the drug covered, the more potential out-of-pocket expense, except for tier 6, which is a mix, can get quite convoluted. Medicare supplement plans, Medigap, otherwise known. They help pay some out-of-the-pocket costs, or almost all out-of-the-pocket costs, if you do choose to stay with Medicare Part A and B, and you just buy this policy as an addition. The great thing about a Medigap or a Medicare supplement plan is anywhere that Medicare, any doctor that takes Medicare, they have to take the Medicare supplement plan as well. So there's no network. Everybody's in the network pretty much. You don't have to worry about referrals either. So they're classified by letters A through N. All plans with the same letter provide exactly the same coverage, but they may differ in what they charge. Plans G, high deductible, and N are the most popular. Enroll, if you're looking at a Medigap plan, enroll during the Medicare enrollment period, or you will have underwriting. What does that mean? If you have health issues and you go through the underwriting and you're not enrolling during the initial Medicare enrollment, then the insurance company may turn you down or may raise the premium so much that it's not beneficial to you. So that's a critical point. If you want all the options, then really look at it at the initial enrollment period around your 65th birthday. And this is just a chart of all the different plans and how they compare. Plan F used to cover absolutely everything except, well, including the Medicare Part B deductible, but that plan is no longer available. So the next closest is Plan G. And again, the only thing it doesn't cover is the Medicare Plan B deductible, which is a few $100s, around $300 or so. Now, one thing about these Medigap plans that's great is you have the foreign travel emergency coverage at 80%. That's very important because Medicare doesn't cover, standard Medicare doesn't cover foreign medical expenses. How much are you going to pay for your Medicare coverage? Now, from 2025 to 2026, the price of Medicare went up 11.5%. How many people's income went up 11.5% over the last year? Anybody want to raise their hand? Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about, where the costs of so people talk about folks that are retired. For the most part, they are on a fixed income, and largely that's true. I would say they're not really on a fixed income. They're on an eternally diminishing income, because inflation is hitting you in a way that your pension and your Social Security is not keeping up. In the meantime, you get like this, you get increases of 11.5% in 1 year on your Medicare cost. So it was $185 per month for an individual in 2025. For next year, it's $206.50 for an individual who, as a single filer, makes less than $109,000 or $109,000 or less. As a couple, $218,000 or less. If your income is in the next bracket, between 109 and 137 for single and 218, 274 for married, then you're paying an extra $82.60. This is that IRMA that you were asking me about. So here's where you start thinking, well, okay, I'm going to be a good, diligent planner of my retirement. Instead of taking my Social Security at 62, I'm going to be diligent and wait until 70 and build up that benefit to such a nice big amount. And now you have that higher taxable benefit at retirement when you're retired. And now, because you have that higher benefit, if it's not planned correctly, you may be falling now into one of these higher brackets where you're getting punished for having waited extra 8 years and not taking your benefit early. So you have to consider that as well, which of these brackets you're likely to fall into, okay? Because I was dealing with a client today. You know, we went to lunch, we talked about her situation. She is actually right here, and she's paying $661 per month for her Medicare. And, you know, she's a normal person. She used to work for the Department of Defense. Now she is a consultant. And it's not like she's a billionaire or anything, just, you know, a normal person that makes good money, but $660 per month, that's quite a bit of money that you're paying. And it's only going to go up from here.
Do they just the modified AGI every year?
Well, it's a 2-year look back. So they're looking at your income 2 years back.
They adjust those numbers every year.
Yes, they do. That great question. Are the numbers adjusted every year? Almost every year they're adjusted. Some years they're not, but almost every year it goes up. Yes?
What capital gains added to the income range?
Yes, they are. Capital gains are added to the modified adjusted gross income. As far as I'm aware, I can double check for you, but I believe they are. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That 660 is adjusted every year, right?
Yeah, it goes up. It never gets adjusted down. Adjusted up.
Earn less the second year.
Well, yes. So it's a 2-year look back. So, yeah, some folks have that kind of a big lump sum payment or something where they have a liquidation of a business or a real estate, and then they have the big income jump for 1 year. They have a much higher Social Security or much higher Medicare IRMA payment, but then year after, if they have lower income, then it adjusts down. That's a great point. Yeah. So it adjusts with your income. But usually, I mean, if you're in one of these brackets, you're probably going to stay in whatever bracket you settle in, you're probably going to stay in that bracket. Other projected Medicare increases. Part B deductible for 2025 it was $257. For 2026 is $288. Part D, so that's the prescription drug coverage, max out of pocket for 2025 was $2,000. For 2026 is $2,100. Part D deductible, 25 it was $590. For 2026, it's $615. So you can see if the CPI for 2025 was 2.5%, that's the cost of living adjustment, as you can see, these increases are not 2.5%. These increases are closer to 5%. Federal employee health benefit, we'll just go through this quickly. Again, most folks that have it love it. Our clients that have the federal plan, they love it and they never get rid of it. They usually often will get Medicare A and B on top of it. 72% of the cost the government pays. Usually you're paying about $250 per person per month. To be eligible for the federal benefit, you have to be eligible for immediate retirement, eligible for pension at retirement, have to have been covered by the federal plan for the last 5 years of employment. So there's several options to go with. Option 1, lower premiums but higher out of pocket, is where you enroll in Medicare Part A only. And inpatient bills, Medicare pays, and then Medicare pays first and the federal plan pays second. Outpatient bills, the federal plan pays for that. Option 2, which is the one most folks pick, in fact, the lady I met with today also, again, she is in this group, enroll in Medicare Part A and B and keep your federal plan. That's pretty much prepaid health care at that point, where Medicare pays first and then federal plan covers second, pays second, all expenses. If you want to try several other options, option 3, you can never go back to the federal plan if you do this. Enroll in Medicare Part A and B with Medicare supplemental plan, usually G or N, and all bills Medicare pays first and the supplemental plan pays second. Option 4, you can suspend your federal plan with the option to go back to it, and that's if you were enrolled in Part A and B, but then you have the Medicare Advantage plan, Part C. The insured pays co-pays, Advantage plan pays balance. Okay, yes?
Is there an advantage to keeping the federal insurance and also get an Advantage plan together?
Well, there's just more coverage. However, what happens is most people don't pick that because they're afraid to lose their federal plan if they don't like the Medicare Advantage.
Okay.
There is a benefit because
You don't keep the federal and then Advantage also?
well, no, you can't do both.
Okay.
Yeah, so you get Medicare Part A and B,
Yeah.
and then you can get the federal plan. And then you do the either A, B, and federal,
Yeah.
or you get rid of the federal and get the Advantage.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you could keep it, I don't know why you want to, but,
Right.
A and B, well, B, and then pay for your federal, and then also get an Advantage.
I've never seen somebody do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question.
Yep.
A little bit confused. Say, for example, if I have AHA plan from the federal government, can I add Medicare, or is it beneficial to add Medicare, or just stick with AHA?
So you say if you have a federal health benefit, and then you get Medicare A and B.
Yeah, is it beneficial?
Well, it's beneficial. So here's that option. Let's say if you have a lot of health issues,
Yeah.
it would be probably advisable to do that, because what happens is your option 2. That's what most people do that have the federal plan. They get Medicare Part A and B, and they keep the federal plan. Especially if you have a lot of health issues, or you anticipate having a lot of health issues, because you're paying probably about $250 per month for that federal plan. I mean, that's usually just a little bit more than you're paying for your Medicare. But then Medicare pays first, and the federal plan pays second. So whatever Medicare is not covering, which is more every year, it seems to really get less and less beneficial. The federal plan will cover the rest of it. So that's why you would do it. It's pretty much prepaid health care.
So the 20% would be covered by federal.
Yeah, depending on
80% will be Medicare.
right, depending on your federal plan, how it's set up. Yeah, but yes, most it's pretty much prepaid health care at that point. Yeah, sure.
federal issue, a supplemental plan.
Yes, exactly. Taxes and inflation in retirement. So we'll talk about Roth conversions. We'll talk about, again, inflation, because these are important factors. So why do we have inflation? National debt as a fraction of GDP. As you can see, we're here now, and this is the projection by the government itself of how much debt is going to go up. So the government is basically doing a modern version of coin clipping. What they're doing is they're printing more money than there really is needed in the system, except it's needed to pay off the debt. Okay, so that's why we have inflation, because there's more money being created than should be. Let's look at some of the changes a few years back due to the Secure Act 2.0. Starting 2023, RMD, your required minimum distribution age, increased to 73 from 72. And in 2033, the age to take RMDs will be 75. So they're pushing back when you have to start taking those distributions. And that's a big deal if you have a lot of money in your retirement accounts, because you get taxed quite a bit on those distributions. Starting this year, there are higher catch-up contributions for individuals 60 through 63 to your 401k or to your TSP, and those are up to $11,250. And the catch-up amount for people age 50 and older in 2025 is currently $8,000. So you have a little bit of an extra catch-up you can do. So starting 2024, IRAs, the contribution limit is $7,000 in 2025, $8,000 if you're age 50 and older. Roth accounts in employer retirement plans are now exempt from required minimum distributions. This is interesting if you have kids that are maybe in their 20s or 30s that have student loans that they're trying to pay back. Now there's a rule where employers are able to match employee student loan payments with matching payments to a retirement plan. 529 plans. So many folks are adding to their kids or their grandkids 529 plans, and maybe that child is really studious and they received a scholarship and a bunch of money was left in that 529 plan. Well, now you can reward that child and take up to $35,000 of the money that's left in that 529 and convert it into a Roth account for that child. Now, this account has to exist for 15 years at least to be eligible to do this conversion. So the contribution limits, again, for a 401k, $23,500. But the total contribution limit, let's say if you're individually employed, your employer can match up to, with the matches, everything together, you can get that up to $70,000. TSP, so if you're a government employee, federal employee, you have the TSP available to you. As you know, the good thing about it, low expenses, it's fairly simple, but relatively few options to invest in. You have now the mutual fund window where you can put up to 25% of your account value into different types of mutual funds. The problem I find with these plans, and the reason that a lot of times clients transfer them, again, the lack of certain options. For instance, if you're interested in AI, if you're interested in different themes like uranium enrichment, or if you're interested in crypto, or different themes that are really doing really well in the markets, you can't get into those really in this plan, so folks will often transfer out just to have more diversification possibility. Another issue I noticed with these plans is they try really hard. It's not the employee's fault, but the system, the way it's set up, is just very difficult operationally to get things done. Like, they want you to go to the website. We'll go to the website with our client. We'll spend half an hour there, and then we still have to call in after waiting 7 days. So that's just an example. So there are good and bad things about the TSP. And again, the cost is probably the best thing about it, the low cost and the simplicity. Converting to a Roth IRA, how many folks have a question or have always wondered about the Roth IRA conversion? Okay, interesting. So Roth conversions are a tool that you can use at the right time. They can be dangerous sometimes in terms of you can end up paying more taxes than you need to because you heard about it and you weren't really sure of the tax consequences. So what is a Roth conversion? Let's say you have a TSP or a 401k and you heard about a Roth conversion. So you can take money from that traditional pre-tax 401k and you can convert it into a Roth IRA. Whatever you're converting, let's say it's $100,000, you're adding that $100,000 to your taxable income. So now you're paying taxes on that $100,000 at your income tax bracket. So when would you want to do this? The only time you would ever want to do this is if, for instance, you had several years there where there's a gap, maybe when you retired or you weren't working for some reason, and then your pension, you started taking your pension or whatever other income source you have, where it went back up, so you had maybe a gap of a few years where you have very low income, and now you can take that Roth conversion and pay a lower income tax than you will in the future. Okay, so it's all about optimizing the tax consequences of future distributions from retirement accounts. Okay, because what will often happen is you'll have that TSP with $1.5 million in it. Your required minimum distributions a few years down the road are going to be, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 per year. If you have a chance to convert some of that and lower those future distributions, you can get those taxes down quite a bit. That's when you do a Roth conversion. You just have to make sure you're using the right software to plan it out properly. Okay.
But it's not worth it once you start RMD.
It's not. It depends. It's not worth it once your income is already high. Why would you make it higher and pay a higher tax? Right. So it's a selective tool to be used at the right time. So that's a great point. So if you're somebody that, or you know somebody that wants to retire early prior to 59 and a half, you know that if you take your money out from an IRA, from a pre-tax account prior to 59 and a half, you're going to pay a 10% penalty. Well, there is a way to avoid that 10% penalty by using the substantially equal periodic payments. There's a calculation we can do where, let's say you have John who's 45, he has $500,000 in the retirement account and wants to retire early and start taking distributions without paying this penalty. There's 3 different calculation methods. The best one would be the amortization method, where John can take $25,511 per year out of this account without the 10% penalty. So there's ways to get around the penalty if you do it correctly. Tax advantage life insurance. You've probably heard this. You maybe seen those videos or those commercials where it's the rich man's bank or something like that, where you use your insurance policy as a tax-free piggy bank, so to speak. The way this works, and again, this has to be used selectively, but it works really well when you do it right. Let's say you have a permanent life insurance policy, and those have cash value. Let's say it's a policy for $1 million, and it costs you $1,000 per month for that policy to sustain it. Well, what if you don't put just $1,000 per month into it, you put $10,000 per month or $20,000 per month up to a certain point? There's a lot of extra cash value that's building up in that policy and is growing tax-free. So what this strategy allows you to do is then take that growth and take a loan out against that policy and use that money, because it's a loan and you're not selling anything. You're now using that money to pay for whatever you need to pay for, and if it's done correctly, there's no tax consequence. And you're paying interest to the insurance company. However, they're using your investments as collateral that are in the policy, so the interest rate is low, and your investments are probably growing, and they're offsetting the interest that you're paying to the insurance policy, to the insurance company. So that's another method that can be used. There are downsides to it, though. So again, that's something that is a tool that can be used at the right time. Market talk. So most of what we do around the planning and so on is actually make sure that our clients' investments are growing effectively. So again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to beat inflation. There's actually data showing that really you should be making 11% per year just to keep up with the debasement of money, which is 8%, and inflation, which is something different. That's 11%, 3% inflation, let's say. So that's 11% just to really keep up over the long run. At a 3% inflation rate, in 24 years, your income is cut in half. At a 6% inflation rate, in 12 years, it's cut in half in real dollars. Okay, so that's something to think about. Now, let's talk about making sure you stabilize your net worth and your investments during your retirement. Why is that? Because if you lose 30% of your portfolio like people lost during COVID, it takes you, at a 6% return, it takes you 6.1 years to get back to even. That's not counting inflation. At an 8% return, 4.6 years. But then again, if you lose only 10%, then it only takes you 1.8 years to get back at 6% return. New math for retirees. Another point here, if you start with 100,000, you lose 10%, get back to, you're at 90,000, it takes you 11.1% to get back to 100. But if you lose 30%, you're at 70,000, now you need to make 43% to get to 100,000. As we know, when the market is losing money, it loses money pretty quickly. It goes down quickly, it goes down on an elevator, and it goes up on an escalator. So you have to be patient to get back up. And again, these numbers, this is a harder number to make than to lose 30%, right? So that's, the math is working against you there. So this is another way, this is important when you're calculating, when you're looking at calculated returns on your on your investment statements. So let's say you start with a $500,000 account, you go to a hotshot money manager, they make you 50% in 1 year, you're at $750,000 1 year. Next year, they're not so hot anymore, all those investments are down 50%, you're at $375,000. Third year, everything is going well again, you're up 30% now. You're at $487,500. You've averaged, so if you look at the investment statement, you're talking with your advisor and they say, hey, I've made you 10% return per year despite this 50% loss. You're telling him, you're defrauding me because my portfolio is now worth $487,500. That is less than the $500,000 I started with. The advisor is actually telling you the truth because the math is correct. However, it doesn't feel like it's correct because you actually have less money. So investment returns, when there's wide swings in the markets, are actually very deceptive. So you have to be careful about how you calculate your returns, and you really look at internal rate of return. How much money did you actually make, not these percentages. That's important. Professional risk management. One of dozens of different strategies we use. This is just a little bit of a trend following overview. One of the very basic methods we use to control risk in portfolios. This was COVID. This was the COVID drop. We de-risked here, and then the market dropped. So when we're thinking about getting back into the market, how are we thinking about it? One of the things that we look at is the trends in the market. We start seeing an upward trend channel forming here, and then so you start adding risk back to the portfolio. And you see this channel, as long as the channel is in place, we stay fully invested. Again, this is one of many different factors we look at. All of a sudden, we see a break in the channel, and then the market, this is the stock market chart, checks back with now the resistance, which used to be the floor. Now we start reducing risk in the portfolio. A new channel, a new downward channel is now persistent in the market. We're watching this. We're kind of controlling risk. We're being defensive here. All of a sudden now, again, we get a breakout. We have a new channel forming. Now we're adding risk to the portfolio again. Again, this is just a little bit of trend following / technical analysis that if you're not just invested in an index fund, if you're working with an advisor that's trying to control risk for you and is earning their money, not just kind of selling something to you, this is something that they might be, one of the ways they look at, one of the dimensions they look at in terms of controlling risk. Tariffs. So clients were terrified for tariffs, as most people were, because, you know, Liberation Day, so to speak. What's going to happen with tariffs? Well, if you look at this chart, what happened with tariffs during Trump's first term, tariffs were raised back then too. Inflation didn't spike, and it was a pretty good market overall. So that's one of the reasons we stayed invested. We didn't get out of the market like a lot of people did. And another point, of course, this was the drop during the Liberation Day scare. The market dropped, but we're looking at sentiment. So this is AAII. They look at how bearish the individual investor is. And this is the stock market. This is what the stock market is doing. We saw that when the average investor is bearish, like when you see these lines, what happens afterwards? The market shoots right back up usually, historically. And the investors were so bearish this has only happened 1, 2, 3, 4 times since 1990. And this is usually a counter indicator. This is actually a time to get into the market, not to get out. So we knew that plus a few other indicators like liquidity, like we saw there's actually money being added to the system by the banks and by the government. We knew that we needed to stay in. Again, this is another factor that we look at for our clients when we're trying to manage the risk in their portfolios. Okay, right now, for instance, macroeconomic indicators, early workforce activity index, we're actually seeing an increase in employment, those early activity indicators that you don't see mentioned on CNN and so on. So you have to have the right research to give you the right data. The white line, so this is what happened. So again, folks were scared what's going to happen with Trump. How's the market going to do? The white line is the global M2, which is the money supply. The market is totally dependent on how much money is being pumped into the system. So the money supply, the white line is 2016, 2017. You see how it was, this is the way it went up, and the market followed. The green line, the global money supply now. Do you see how it's almost identical? That's why the market has done so well also, because it's really a house of cards that's being held up by liquidity, unfortunately. But when the money's being pumped into the system, most of the time, it's not the only factor, but most of the time, the market follows. And again, another indicator, global M2 is the white line. The NASDAQ, which is the tech stocks, the hot tech stocks, so to speak, is the green line. You see how they're perfectly correlated? Sometimes you get a liquidity air pocket when the market goes up and then it adjusts back down to the money supply. You see here, this was during the Liberation Day scare. The stock market went way down, but liquidity was going up. And this is what we're looking at. Hey, money's being added to the system. The market is just not listening to this is a very important factor. So the market recovered very well, and folks who got out here paid for it with their pocketbook. Okay? Bitcoin cycle top finder. This is the Bitcoin price, the green line. The white line is the Bitcoin cycle top finder indicator. And as you can see, this is the top, this is the top. We're nowhere near the top. And again, why folks say, I'm afraid of Bitcoin, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Why are you talking about it? Because this is a macro asset. What Bitcoin does often is showing you, is foreshadowing what the stock market is going to do. That's why I put it up here. And our clients, many of them are invested in Bitcoin because they're interested in crypto, and it's really a macro, one of the most important assets, becoming so over time. There's different seasons in the markets. I'm going to go through this quickly. And different investments do well in different seasons in the market. The only time you really want to be defensive is during the winter, so to speak. Probably going to start sometime mid-next year, which is moving towards a recession. We're not there yet. Right now, again, we're fully invested. Again, our base case is risk on right now. We're always watching. Something could change, but again, probabilities are in our favor at this point. Macroeconomic indicators. So again, total liquidity is the black line. Government expenditures is the red line. Total liquidity is what we talked about, is what matters for government or for the stock market. If liquidity is going up, the stock market is going up, right? So the federal government current expenditures are likely to go straight up, parabolic, right? Hockey stick. So what do you think is going to happen with liquidity? Where is the government going to get the money to pay for all this stuff? They're going to get it by adding it, by creating it out of nothing. So what is that going to do to the stock market over time? Probably going to go up, unless something unforeseen happens. Okay, we're talking history. So as far as investment themes that we've added to our portfolios, infrastructure spending, energy and fossil fuels, defense and military, financial deregulation, these are some of the very wide focused themes. Healthcare, domestic manufacturing, AI, technology, and crypto. That's just give you some idea of what's looking pretty good at this point with this administration. Quickly here, again, as a retiree, why sequence of returns matters. Okay, this is actual stock market returns from 2001 through 2020. Average returns for the S&P 500, 6.91%. Okay? This person put $1 million in at 2001, took out $50,000 per year. At the end of 20 years, they had $304,600 left. Okay? They had these two down years in 2001, 2002, those big recession, if you remember that, the tech bubble popped. The same person, if you take those same returns, but put them backwards, like 2020 was the first year and 2001 was the last year, take out the 50,000 per year, the same person started with $1 million, ended up with $1,619,000, not $304,000. Why is that? Because the first 2 years were actually very healthy years in the market, and those bad years were down here at the end. You see, so sequence of returns is very important. So that's why you want to smooth out your returns in your investment portfolio if you're living off the money and you're taking out substantial percentage where it could hurt you if there's a big downturn. Average recession, so average bear market is about 32% loss in the stock market. So I mentioned annuities because for some clients they make sense. So this is a investment-only annuity, no fees. So we have a client who's so this lady is a teacher, very conservative, very studious, and very diligent in saving. So she had about $725,000 saved up in her IRA. She wanted to not pay taxes, and she wanted to not pay fees, and she didn't want to have any losses, but she wanted to make money. So I said, okay, well, what we can do here is look at an indexed accumulation-only annuity. So there's no fees, there's no losses, and you're tied to an index that goes up partially with the stock market. So this is the year during COVID, as you remember how that was. She made $118,000 in that year, which is a 16.3% return, net of fees, and with no downside risk. Now, it's not every year like this because there's no losses, so you're taking less risk. But if you want something where it's tax deferred, you're not paying taxes until you take money out, and you want partial tied to the stock market, this is a tool that you may want to consider. Another approach now, because interest rates are higher, you're getting bonuses now. So this is another strategy that we've looked at. So $100,000 you put in, there's no downside risk. You're tied to the stock market for upside gains partially, and you get a 16% upfront bonus. Okay, so if you go to the bank and you put money into a CD, do you get a 16% upfront bonus? You don't. Okay, so this is another strategy. So you get tax deferral. When you put money into a CD in an IRA, you get tax deferral, but if it's just taxable money, you don't. But with this approach, you do get tax deferral. So let's talk about some other issues with retirement. Long-term care costs. Okay, so if you look at the blue, assisted living right now costs $6,100 per year, per month, sorry, $6,100 per month. And we see this all the time. We see those ACH direct debits coming out of our clients' accounts. That's what it costs. And for nursing home, $11,000 per month. In 2035, it's projected to be $8,700 for assisted living per month and $15,600 for nursing home. Okay, so people need to have that money somewhere. And what are we seeing with Medicaid? Because for most people in this country, Medicaid pays for that nursing home because folks don't have this money saved up. As we know, there's relatively few people that have enough money to pay for this themselves. So what do we see happening with Medicaid? Do we see benefits being added to Medicaid? Do we see our government being kind of rich with money and like the Qatar of North America and just having all this extra money from oil or anything, and they're just subsidizing and they're just paying for everybody's free health care? No, they're not. They are reducing the amount of Medicaid benefits that the federal government pays, and they're forcing states to pay more. States don't have any money either, so they are also reducing the amount of Medicaid benefits, right? So the trend is there's less money and people need to take care of themselves more, right? So how are you going to pay for this? 47% of men and 58% of women will have a long-term care event that they'll need to pay for. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. Medicaid does pay, but the government really makes sure you're destitute. They really want to make sure you're wrung out, you don't have any money left, and you don't want to be in that situation.
And by the way, like for instance, parents,
Yep.
they didn't file, but even if you did, it's for the option. places that they're eligible, but like I want to put my dog anywhere.
There you go. That's a great point. Yes, you really want to have the choice of where you go, because at that point you're very vulnerable. Let's say, even if you have children or a partner, they have to take care of themselves too. They have their own lives, and you want to be in a place where you feel comfortable. You've heard the horror stories about these nursing homes, assisted living facilities. The help there leaves a lot to be desired a lot of times, and you want to make sure you're in a good place. And the good ones cost a lot of money. I know because I've dealt with all of them, and because we have clients going into those facilities. They cost a lot of money. But it's not unattainable if you plan for it correctly. So how can we pay for long-term care? There's long-term care insurance. There's annuity with long-term care rider, which pays additional funds if you have a long-term care event. And there's a life insurance with a long-term care rider. Traditional standalone long-term care insurance has cheaper premiums, but it has unknown premium increases. So sometimes everybody in the state may get an increase, sometimes up to 50%. So it can be pretty high. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So that's why it's cheaper, it's less expensive. Hybrid life insurance with long-term care benefits. For our clients, this has been the most attractive, because folks don't want to keep paying for something for decades, and then if they pass away and they don't use long-term care, their heirs end up with nothing. So that's why life insurance, which has a long-term care benefit, is often what's been interesting for clients. What this is, let's say you have $1 million life insurance policy, and you have a long-term care event. That long-term care event over 4 years costs you $400,000. So the insurance company will pay that $400,000, and instead of paying, when you pass away, $1 million to your heirs, now they'll pay the $600,000, whatever is left net after paying for the life insurance or for the long-term care, insuring your long-term care expense. The last is annuity with long-term care benefits. The downside is large upfront premium, no premium increases, but the benefit is no premium increases, and there's usually no underwriting. So if you're uninsurable, what happens a lot of times with this, we've had this happen, that the problem with these two is, again, you have to be insurable to get one of these policies. And if you have health issues, they're not going to insure you, or it's going to be so expensive that it's not going to make sense. So that's why often the annuity approach, where you're getting income anyway, like a private pension, guaranteed income, but then the income increases if you have a long-term care event. This is actually an actual proposal that we did. This is an example of one of those. So this client put in $1 million. She did not have a pension, and she liked the pension approach. She liked to have a guaranteed income for the rest of her life, so she's putting in $1 million. She would be getting 9.2% out of her portfolio for life at age 70. So I don't know, that's the good thing about a lot of times about these policies is you get a very high withdrawal rate from an annuity company, much higher than you can take from your own portfolio, because I don't know anybody that is taking 9.2% per year from their investment portfolio and is comfortable doing so and having it last the rest of their life. The reason an insurance company can do this is because they don't have to worry about guaranteeing until age 92. You have to worry about having enough money until age 92. Really, statistically, they're using statistics to their advantage, because they're not one family. They are hundreds of thousands of investors and of clients who on average are only going to live to that 86 or to mid 80s, or actually for them it's probably closer to around 80, something like that. So they're getting those extra years. For folks who are living longer, they are paying for those folks. They are paying for those folks with the money that they didn't have to pay out to folks who didn't live as long. Okay, so that's the key there. That's why you're able to get that extra income. And every year she didn't take money out, she gets 7.2% increase, like Social Security. And here is the critical point with long-term care. She's getting this income of $91,870 per month, per year, not per month. Now, when there is a long-term care event, so let's say the long-term care event took place here in the 3rd year, she gets an impairment multiplier. So this policy is actually more than double, $215,000. So that subsidizes the long-term care cost. Okay, and that can go on for up to 5 years as long as there's cash value in the policy. It will pay for that income. After 5 years, the income will continue, but just back to that $91,000. Okay? Okay, so what should you expect from your financial professional if you do choose to work with them? Make sure that they ask you the right questions, really understand your situation, understand your needs, always put your best interest first, client education, written plan, retirement plan, and communication and review. Again, the family office model, investment management, financial planning, estate planning, and tax preparation all included in a fee which is actually usually less than you'd pay for one of the big firms. Our fees start at 1% and go down from there. And some clients just come to us for a plan. Hourly, we do that as well. That's it. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, anybody have any questions? Okay, must have covered it all pretty well. Thanks a lot.